everyone, welcome. Can folks hear me? Let's make sure that that is working. Um, welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. We are just going to make sure that we're all set up before we get started. Oh, good. Yay. Folks are in the chat. You can hear me. Okay, great. So as folks are pouring in, this workshop turned out to be more popular than I expected it to be by about a factor of 10. So, hi, great. I'm glad you can hear me. Literally my own friends in the chat right now. Okay, so we are just going to take a couple minutes before we get started. And before we do, we would love it if you would put in the chat put in the chat where you're joining us from and one thing that you're hoping to learn today. Welcome in, folks. Come one, come all. Okay. And we're probably going to get started in about 1 minute. And we're asking folks to drop in the chat where you're joining us from and one thing you are hoping to learn today. Great. Okay. So let's see. So as you can tell, we are going to have the chat open. And we're encouraging you to use the chat to share your reactions and your comments. Great. I see folks putting in where they're from, something they're hoping to learn. So we want folks to use the chat to share reactions and comments. And then we'd like you to use the Q&A function to ask questions. Just helps us keep track rather than trying to find your questions in the chat. Everybody clear on that? We'll repeat it. Also, today's session is being recorded, and we are going to send it to everyone who RSVP'd. So you'll have a copy, and we encourage you to share it with others, watch it with other people, and use it as a training tool. Okay. And we are planning for this to be about 90 minutes, give or take. And we're happy to stay on a bit longer if there are more questions. Okay, great. All right. So again, welcome folks. We're going to get started now. We're asking you to put in the chat where you're joining us from and one thing you're hoping to learn today. And now I'm going to pass it to Lex and Jade.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lex. I'm going to stay invisible today. I'm one of your tech people with Turner. I'll mostly be sharing screens, so if you're having some issues, you can message Turner directly. And if you do need closed captions, you can find those at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There should be a button with 3 dots, a circle with 3 dots that says more. And if you click on that, you can find show captions from there. Hope that's helpful, and I hope you have a good session. And oh, and all the links that we're going to be putting in the chat are also going to be in the follow-up email.
Great. Is Jade on? Okay, so we need someone to unmute Jade.
I'm gonna add her as a or them as a panelist.
Great.
But it's gonna just take a second.
Okay. In the meantime, we still have people joining us. Hi, everyone. We're so glad you're here. We're so excited for this conversation. Myself and Jules just ran a small, very successful mutual aid fundraising campaign for a Gazan families evacuation fund. And kind of out of that, was inspired this training. So we're really excited to kind of take you through. Oh, here we go, Jade. Is on video. Can you unmute? Yay.
Yes, can you hear me okay? Awesome. Hey guys, I'm Jade. I organize with JVP-LA, so I wanted to just give a quick intro to who we are and what we do. So JVP is a national grassroots Jewish anti-Zionist organization working towards Palestinian freedom. And we have chapters all over the country. I organize with the LA chapter and the Direct Action Spoke, which focuses on organizing actions in support of Free Palestine. And one of the roles that I hold in that spoke is organizing trainings like this one. And we're going to keep organizing trainings. So if you would like to join the chapter, if you're not already a member, we're going to drop in the chat the interest form where you can sign up to join. And that is also how you will get our newsletters and any outreach about actions that are coming up. And then we also operate on a spoke model. So I am in the action spoke, but we have a bunch of other spokes where we organize things like membership, we do art for actions, we have a partnership spoke. So we're also going to drop a little bit of the blurbs about each spoke and how to get involved. You can contact the contact person on Signal, and their name will be next to the spoke that you're interested in. And then, yeah, we have a couple actions coming up. One is happening in mid-June, so stay on the lookout for that. And I'm just super grateful to Chanelle and Jules for organizing this training and making it happen. And thanks to everyone for being here.
Thanks so much, Jade. Okay, I think we're going to introduce ourselves now. Hey, Jules. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jules. I use they, them pronouns. I'm calling in from unceded Chumash and Tongva Gabrielino land, also known as Los Angeles. I'm an urban planner and an organizer. I'm a co-founding member of White People for Black Lives, which was founded 10 years ago. It serves as the Los Angeles chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice. I also organize with Jewish Voice for Peace, Los Angeles. And I came into fundraising skills by being trained and organized by other organizers, which I think is how movements are built. Organizers organizing others through a snowflake model or spokes model. I'm not a professional fundraiser, but I'm here to share how I was organized into coordinating a pretty meaningful and impactful fundraising campaign without any obscure or specialized knowledge. Chanelle, I'll pass it to you.
Cool. Thanks, Jules. So hi, everyone. Yeah, I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Chanelle Gallant. I use she, her pronouns. I am from Toronto, Canada, but currently calling in from unceded Chumash and Tongva land, otherwise known as Los Angeles. I am an author, I'm an organizer, and a movement money maven. And I come from my background is I come from a poor family that's been impacted by prisons and criminalization. I've been organizing around sex workers' rights and racial justice against state violence for over 2 decades. And I started fundraising at the moment I started organizing because we needed money for legal defense funds. And I've done it since. I love training and coaching people in grassroots fundraising because I think it allows us to resource the most bold frontline work before it is recognized and supported and funded more broadly. And also because I come from poor working class communities that really need mutual aid to survive. So I see it as extremely crucial work. I also think it is some of the uncoolest work you can do in organizing, and I am proud to do it. I want to mention that I'm also going to do a little drop-in office hours in 2 weeks from today because I would really love people to come and share updates or bring your follow-up questions. And that's going to be, we'll send information on a follow-up email, but that's going to be June 19 at 5 p.m. Pacific. And I think that's it. And I think I'm going to pass it back to you, Jules.
Great. Okay, I'm going to offer some political framing as we begin. We're in month 9 of Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza and 75 years of occupation under apartheid rule. We're part of a movement that is resisting this genocide and the siege on Gaza by Israel and organizing to free Palestine in our lifetime. So moving resources is a tangible way to support survival and a really important form of organizing. For families seeking to evacuate, like refugees everywhere, they're having to pay exorbitant fees to survive. For those who stay in their homelands, the cost of surviving under this genocidal attack is overwhelmingly high. Staying and needing to continuously relocate after your home has been bombed and finding food and water and shelter is really, really pricey. It should have no cost at all. We're trying to get aid directly into people's hands and to fund organizers who are on the ground in the US who are doing unfunded grassroots organizing on campuses across the country who need funds to sustain encampments and local organizing. So we're talking about raising funds that are saving the lives of Gazan families and funds for people who are experiencing Israel's bombing and funding some of the most bold and strategic organizing in the country, including student-led organizing on campuses. So we're gonna have about 90 minutes today for this webinar, plus a Q&A around that 90-minute mark for those with additional questions. If you do have questions, please use the Q&A feature to submit a question. So we're recording this event and plan to email it to everyone who has RSVP'd. And also just feel free to use the chat and share your reactions and comments with us as we go. Yeah, this format means it's extra wonderful to have engagement in the chat. So in terms of an overview of the agenda today, we're going to talk about why grassroots rapid response fundraising, the challenge that's facing us, why grassroots fundraisers fail, the power building approach to grassroots fundraising. We're going to share some campaign stories from the ground. We're going to share fundamentals of a rapid response campaign, including making the ask and its challenges. We'll talk about selecting campaigns. I think we're going to have time to plant some seeds for your campaign or a campaign and start to make an ask and plan that out. We're going to do a closing and then jump into Q&A for those who want to stick around a little longer.
Great. Thank you, Jules. Yeah, thank you so much for all that you're putting into the chat. I've already been really moved by what I've read from people's registration forms where you talked about why you are showing up today. I find it really beautiful and moving that people care so much. They really want to make a difference. And that's why most of us come into fundraising, because we know the incredible impact that it can have. So I want to say a little bit about the breadth of the impact that grassroots fundraising can have. The first is its independence and its political integrity. When you fundraise from your own community, it offers organizers autonomy and control over the money. It allows us to fund work that is not yet being supported more broadly, that might never be supported by larger funding bodies like foundations. It has an outsized impact. You can have a massive impact with a few $1,000s that funds some very frontline generative work that is then people are inspired by and copy around the region, around the country, and around the world, which is what we saw with encampments. Those just need some thousands of dollars to keep going. So this injection of funds to the front line can have a compounded impact on organizing and on movements around the world. Obviously, it's tangible. It's a concrete form of support in an uncertain time. You can, and we do, literally save lives through the fundraising into mutual aid. Grassroots fundraising also has the beauty of being very nimble and responsive. It can be very fast. When something is happening, when there's a new opportunity or a new risk, we can respond to it really quickly. People who have these skills are the ones that are called on in those moments to really quickly mobilize resources. And I want all of you to have those skills or to have more of them. It's accessible. A lot of my comrades cannot be in the streets, including me much of the time, do not want to be in the street. There's so many reasons why it is not safe to participate in physical street protest, many. And fundraising can be a way that you can still have an enormously impactful, supportive relationship or impact on movements without having to be in the streets. It also means, you know, the way we are going to teach it to you, it means being in a team. If you have less spoons, someone else can take more of the responsibility. It can be very finite, where you're in a specific campaign where you've got capacity for a specific amount of time, which really helps people who can't guarantee an ongoing capacity. And what I'll say is that grassroots fundraising is very powerful because of the ways that I think it's really not cool, but very powerful. And I would love to see some folks put in the chat what moves you about grassroots fundraising. And I'm going to talk next about some of the challenges, though, right? So I'd love to hear from some of you about what you love about it. I want to hear some of that before we talk about you're here because there's something going wrong. There's an issue, right? Here are some of the challenges that I hear a lot from people. A big one is I've already tapped out of my existing networks. I feel like I've asked everyone I know and I can't keep going back to the same people. Oh, that's nice. I'm hearing someone put something positive into the chat. Watching everyone come together and cheer it all on. It's really fun and beautiful. It's exciting. So this one that I'm talking about here, some people call donor fatigue, right? That people feel very saturated. Another one is, you know, there's a million different fundraisers. I don't know how to make sure that mine stands out. I always hear, but I don't know rich people. So I can't raise a big chunk of money. How am I going to raise $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 without rich people? Not a problem. Or I have been raising money, but things have really slowed down and stalled. I'm not seeing traction anymore. I'm not getting the same kinds of contributions that I used to get. And so things just feel like they're grinding to a halt. Another one is just, I don't have networks or I don't know what I'm doing, right? Those are some of the challenges that people are facing. Well, that's nice. Someone's also saying in the chat, like how moving it is to be so closely connected to people who are receiving the aid and the connection you can get through that. It's really incredible. I have been able to hand people money, cash money, and it's so amazing the impact you can have on someone to be in a room and raise the money or to hand the money and know that you are making such an impact on someone's life. You don't always get to see that kind of an impact in organizing, but sometimes in fundraising, we really do. Okay, what is our next one? Oh, we're going to do a poll. I am going to have, I think, Turner, you're running the poll. Oh, there it is. So you can select all that apply. It doesn't have to be, it's not mutually exclusive. We're going to ask you, of these challenges, which ones do you feel like you are most dealing with? I'm going to watch in real time as it comes through. Okay, it is moving. Should I just end it? I haven't, okay, I think I'm gonna, oops, oh, it disappeared. Now I don't know where it is. What happened to the poll? There it is. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, what did we end up with? Let's look at our results. Can folks see? It's saying that it's sharing, but I wanna make sure that people can see. So coming in at number 1, tapped out of my existing networks. That's what I'm hearing the most of. Okay, great, you can see it. And then a close second is, I don't know how to stand out, right? I'm used to, in the past, it's interesting, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and in the past I used to constantly get, I don't know rich people. Now people are asking, but they're getting the, I feel like I've tapped out. So I think actually more people are fundraising. I think it speaks to a different moment that we're in. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Okay. These are the challenges people are dealing with. You are not alone. You can see a lot of these kind of overlap, but you can see that people are struggling with a lot of the same things. And the next thing I'm gonna go into are some of the reasons why I see grassroots fundraising efforts fail. Then we're gonna talk about what works, okay? But first, let's talk about what doesn't work. Okay. Next slide. Okay, this is my my framing. When I look at people's fundraisers, what I notice is that I see 2 major problems. Well, one problem with 2 categories. What I see are people trying to use a form of power they don't really have. So they're over-relying on either their access to visibility, and they don't have a big amount of visibility, or their access to wealth. Oh, I'm just remembering I did not complete this slide. We're going to see an incomplete slide next. That's fine. Okay. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so over-reliance on social media. A lot of people will say to me, I'm posting all the time. It's in my stories. I'm using hashtags. I'm collaborating. And they're not seeing the same kind of results anymore. There is a good reason for that. A big part of that is because you need to have a massive reach. And most of us don't have that. It's a form of power we don't have access to. Or if we have some reach, say you've got like 20,000 followers, then you exhaust it. You use it up. So it's only going to get you so far. Look at this statistic though. If you're scrolling and you see a social media post, maybe about 1 in 1,000 is going to give to a social media fundraiser, like a GoFundMe they see on something. But if you ask someone you are in a relationship with of some sort, face to face for a gift, you'll get about a 50%, about 1 in 2 will give. So you've got a drastically lower chance of getting a yes if you rely on social media. You're relying on a form of power you just don't have. The algorithms are designed against us, which someone put in the chat as well, right? Okay, so yes, right. And actually not only the algorithms designed against us, we're probably going to see increasing suppression of fundraising on social media. Okay, next slide, which is the incomplete one. I was supposed to finish this one. I did not. I forgot. Okay, so the second form of power I see people over-relying on that they don't have is wealth. This is the I don't know rich people issue, right? You don't need rich people to raise money through grassroots fundraising. And that is because wealthy people actually give a significantly smaller portion of their income than poor and working class people do. So what you can get, you know, first of all, there are more poor and working class people. There's a ton more poor and working class people than there are rich people. And you can get tons of small and medium gifts that are far more accountable to the community you're fundraising for than the one large gift, which is very hard to access. Most of us don't have access to those resources, and wealthy people do not give to the same extent. Okay. Yes. So people, yeah, thank you. Someone's putting in the chat, basically, they have always, you know, their engagement in fundraising asks on stories is absolutely collapsing, and they're finding much more success with asking networks directly. Well, funny you should mention that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, yes, thank you, right, because when we do mutual aid, much of the gifts we get are small, but me and Jules are going to talk about some of the surprisingly large gifts you'll get from working class people. Don't count them out, and don't count out major donations. So instead of wealth, instead of visibility, we rely on people, right? We build our power through other people. So this is what I'm calling the power building approach to grassroots fundraising. And it's where we turn donors into organizers. We build each of our donors' power one by one. We use a recruitment method to bring them into fundraising. You don't just make an ask, you recruit people into organizing. And it is an organizing craft that calls on your leadership as an organizer. And I want to drop a little link to sort of an organizing 101 resource that people have found really helpful. Okay, we are, let's see, I'm just going to go back to my little notes and see where we're at. Okay, great. Okay. So the thing that is really distinct about this method is that rather than making asks, you are recruiting in new energy, new networks, new labor power, and new money. It builds leadership, which builds our movements. That's very different than just a fundraising campaign, okay? So there's two different approaches. And it seemed to me that in this group of folks, we have two broad groups of people. One is those with little to no experience, and one is those with more experience, but who are hitting a wall and are finding that their fundraising has stalled. So first I'm going to talk about, this is going to be an overview, then we're actually going to go into the concrete examples. So the first method, here's what we do. If someone says to me, I need to raise $5,000 to $10,000, I don't know what I'm doing. Or I've tried asking on my social media and it's not working, right? I got $200, I don't know where to go from here. Here's what I would say. I would say, one, who in your network has some leadership capacity? And what I'm looking for is someone who has passion, more than perfect analysis, right? Enough alignment that you're on the same team, but passion, more than perfection, is available and has shown some follow through. Ask them to be in your network until you get a group of 4 to 6 people. You're going to make a little fundraising team. Together, you're going to plan a 10-day fundraising campaign that has a specific financial goal and a specific deadline. You're going to support each other to make direct one-on-one asks through conversations in your personal networks. This does not rely on social media almost at all, minimally. And you're going to be a team captain. You're going to do daily updates, celebrations, troubleshooting with people to support them in this 10-day campaign. We're going to go into more detail, but that is strategy number 1. Can we go to the next slide now? Strategy number 2, you've already asked people on your network. This is for you. Or your network is not very supportive. There's not many people you can ask. Here's what you're going to do. Of the people you've asked, you've been asking a whole bunch of people. Who were your strongest leaders? Again, passion, availability, follow through. Those are the qualities I look for. They might not be for you, but certainly that's how I will quickly recruit. Okay. You're going to ask them if they will run their own fundraising team. You are going to be their coach. You become their coach and you support them with whatever they need, whether that's troubleshooting, whether that's resources, whether that's doing some team building, accountability to just check in, how are things going? And then after the campaign, you do the same thing by asking one of them to recruit their strongest donors and found their own fundraising team. So it's the snowflake method, right? One builds another, builds another, builds another. That's the overview. And I think I'm going to pass it to you now, Jules.
Great. All right. So to guide folks through the fundamentals of a rapid response grassroots fundraising campaign, we're going to share 2 successful campaign stories, one through an organization and one for an individual and a family. So we'll go through each of the components and the fundamentals and share anecdotes along the way. Chanelle is going to discuss the COVID-19 Sex Worker Emergency Support Fund. And then I'm going to provide anecdotes on this recent campaign to support a Palestinian family's survival funds, where we raised 10K in 2 days, which then grew to 12K in 4 days. So I think on the next slide, we'll start. Great, thank you. Yeah, so we're going to go through a bunch of these. These are fundamentals of a rapid response grassroots fundraising campaign. So first, identify your people and form a team. So Chanelle's friend was supporting their former student, Ahmed, with raising survival funds for their family in Palestine. Their campaign stalled, and MJ reached out to Sunny and his partner, Chanelle. MJ asked if Chanelle and Sunny knew some big funders, and Chanelle offered to organize a team. So she reached out to me to be part of that team and part of that reach. So then the next piece here is to set a goal and a deadline. We originally set a goal of 5,000. We hit that goal in 1 day, and immediately decided to increase the goal to 10,000, just given how responsive the asks were. These funds were urgent, so we set a goal to raise the money within 6 days, and we hit that goal early. The next component here is to make a list of at least 20 people. So develop a prospect list. And I did this by going through my text messages and pulling out the most recent folks that I'd been in touch with. And then I just expanded from there. There's also a link for Chanelle's donor prospecting tool that we'll add to the chat. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, Chanelle, any other anecdotes to share?
First of all, isn't Jules amazing? They joined this team, a 3-person team, and in 2 days raised $10,000. Jules did the bulk of the asking. And one of the things, yes, thank you, some appreciation in the chat for Jules. When we did this, honestly, guys, what I'm talking about isn't rocket science. I did maybe a 15 to 20 minute training with Jules before we started. Got on the phone. I was like, look, here's the plan. Here's what I'm thinking. Do you want to be a part of this? Let me just give you a little, what I'm thinking about how this could look. I have trained people in the back of a bar before they did an ask at a fundraiser. Like, it's not really complex. What it takes, though, is courage to make the direct asks. And it takes leadership. It takes believing yourself as a leader and being willing then to train others. So I want to highlight a couple things. This all happened relationally. So I got involved with this particular fundraiser because it was for my friend's former student. And then I recruited people I knew, right? And that's good. We want to organize relationally. We want to organize through people or organizations that we have an existing relationship with. And we'll get to some of the challenges about if you don't, right? But when it's organizational, so for example, with the sex worker campaign that I was a part of, it was 6 of us from 2 different organizations, and I had standing relationships with both of them. I provided a training to the team, and I asked them to pull a list of everyone. These were small organizations, very small budget organizations. I asked them to pull a list of everyone who had donated in the previous year. Then we divided it up, and everyone was going to make a call to one of the previous donors to make a direct ask. So that's sort of how we made our 20-person list of people to call were our previous donors. We could also have called all of our personal networks, but if you've already done that, then one thing to look at is who in your networks, who are their lists. We're trying to build a team so that it doesn't rely on your networks. The other thing I'll say is we initially set our goal and we met it really fast because we set a conservative goal. I generally like to be a little conservative in setting a goal so that you can meet it. And you get some time to assess the power of your campaign. How much is this going to catch on? You don't know at first, right? So if you set a more modest goal, then you can sometimes beat it really fast. Okay, so there's a question in the chat, calling instead of emailing. Oh yes, we'll get to that. There will not be emailing. There will be phone calls. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to you, Julie.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to continue on with some fundamentals. Yeah, help each other tell your story, write your pitches, get feedback. I asked Chanelle for a blurb that I could repurpose to start to swiftly make my asks. And she said no. She invited me very graciously to come up with my own, so I could personalize it. I just did it immediately on the spot on a sticky note. It wasn't like as daunting as I anticipated it would be. And I shared it back with her for some feedback. And then I practiced with another friend. And the feedback was primarily keep it short and keep it personal. And writing it myself was like made it that much more personal. The next piece here is to reach out to your people via one-to-ones, phone calls. This is in order of priority. Phone calls, voice memos, texts. I started with phone calls and voice memos, as much as I hate phone calls, and was asking folks to set up time for a one-to-one. And on some of the voice memos just included a direct ask. And then I moved to texts. And then like lastly, I posted on socials, and made the clear, simple one-to-one ask. So I set up time to chat with folks, and then just dove right in. The one-to-ones were really great. I think it reflects more of an intentional and relational organizing approach as opposed to socials as a little bit more passive. So the phone calls were actually like wildly successful. Chanelle, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, question for you and a question for the group. Jules, did anyone that you asked over the phone say no and not give?
One person asked to get back to me. Otherwise, everybody I called on the phone gave some amount.
Okay, so what do you think your success rate was then? What's the percent of your success rate there?
98%.
Okay, so when I say that you have a 50% likelihood of getting a yes to a face-to-face ask, that's extremely conservative. It's likely going to be higher. It's incomparable to a social media post. The other thing I want to ask the group is, why do you think I did not provide Jules with a template ask? I've done that in the past, and I've asked other people to do it for me, where I've been like, can you just send me a sample email that I could use to base mine on? But why do you think in this case, I didn't provide a template to Jules? Yeah, somebody put personal stake. Yeah, because they would read it and it would sound fake. People will ignore a boilerplate. The personal conveys how genuine it is. So Jules would write it in their own voice. Yeah. So, it lacks a human touch. I'm balancing as a coach. What does the person I'm coaching need? If I think it's going to make them so anxious that it's going to stop the whole process, then I would be like, why don't let's just type it out right now. Let's just do it right now. And I would do that. It's not bad or wrong to do that. If I'm working with a fundraiser who's like, I really feel like this is making me so anxious, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, I'd be like, okay, friend, how does this sound? And we start workshopping it together. But with Jules, I was like, no, you can do this. Like you can write 2 sentences that's like, and plus I really do want to hear Jules's voice. What matters to you about this? Why are you doing this? You know, it's so much better that if we can, and as a coach, I want to build someone else's leadership. I want to get you to a point where you're like, yes, I can just do this because I feel it, you know? So in that case, that's what I did. But it's also okay to just support people by helping them to draft a like a template ask. Okay. The thing I want to say too about timing is to make your asks right away, ideally before you've posted anything, so that you get some momentum. You really want to see momentum at the beginning of the campaign. Campaigns don't really go like this. Like they start, you want to see a strong start. And because when you make asks to someone face to face, you're on a phone call, it forces you to say it in a clear way and to test the resonance of your ask. Is it working? Does it sound right to you? Is it landing with people? Are you getting the same question every time you make an ask? Say you ask 6 people, okay, and 3 of them ask you the same question. Well, you should be that tells you there's a question you need to answer in your ask. So it's like testing, right? It's testing before you put something out there. It gives you the chance to refine it based on the feedback. In the next section, I'm going to share 5 elements that go into an ask, but I'm going to pause that until we're done this part, right? And you'll notice that this campaign is not hosting a fundraiser. That is a whole different can of worms. If you want to raise money really fast, you don't have time for a fundraiser. And fundraisers are really designed for a particular thing in the world of philanthropy. You're not doing it. You're just trying to raise money. And if you're already going to do a fundraiser, some people on this call are like, I'm planning when it's coming up. Great. Then I would just say add direct asks into your fundraiser. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to you, Jules.
Great. So next we have track donations. Sunny developed an incredible tracking tool for us to use. And it might be going in the chat soon. We wanted to be able to share it with folks if that's helpful. So we wanted to really track the total amount, but we wanted to understand who the donation was connected to, who made the ask. And as folks that we conducted those original one-to-ones started to reach out to their networks, we recognized fewer and fewer names, like looking through the GoFundMe list. And that was an indicator that this model was working well. We would go through the most recent ones and have no idea who they were. But then we would ask our folks that we had connected with, and they would say, oh, I know that person. I reached out to them. So yeah, it was like a good moment when Sunny, Chanelle and I could no longer point to a name and recognize it. The tracking form was also important since we encouraged folks to consider donating through Zelle directly, and not just to GoFundMe. We offered some options based on what people preferred, but offering the Zelle option allows an opportunity to avoid fees and extra steps for Ahmed to get the money through GoFundMe. They just have extra steps, extra fees, extra time. And so we were also getting donations from folks in the US and from Canada. So we accounted for multiple payment types, and we were accounting for completed payments and anticipated payments. So yeah, thank you for adding these to the chat. Yeah, please feel free to make a copy of that document if you can see it and open it and use it for yourself. So the next piece here is update your community. We provided updates once we hit the initial goal and once the campaign was funded. We did that on socials. We did that through one-to-ones. The next piece is to adapt, grow the team, change the goal. We just continued to adapt when we hit the first goal, we shifted. We wanted to be able to help Ahmed reach his ultimate goal, not just what we thought we could fundraise, which we were able to do. There was an ultimate goal, and money will always be needed. And then this next piece here, cheerlead, celebrate wins. Yeah, it was exciting to see people being responsive, the campaign growing, and it was encouraging. It seemed to be working. Yeah, it was working well. Chanelle.
Jules, can you say a little bit about what I think was one of the, I mean, I feel like there were two major adaptations that we made. One was we hit our goal so fast, we doubled it. And then the second one was the ad hoc member. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes. Part of this strategy is to organize other people and invite other people to reach out to their networks. And a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, I was noticing that like they were bringing in a lot of folks who were donating, and I was seeing them really actively reaching out. And we immediately identified them as like an ad hoc member. And I don't think I named that to them until after the fact, that they were essentially an ad hoc member. They were taking on so much leadership. All of the things that Chanelle had mentioned earlier is like leadership, availability, passion, dedication, follow through. So yeah, this friend basically became an ad hoc member in a really important way. And like we were growing the team really strategically. And it was great to be able to identify this person and a couple more too.
Yeah, the thing is, like, what I'm really encouraging you to think about, and my framework is an organizing framework. You're an organizer. So if you see somebody really jumping in there like that, and you're like, oh, wow, you didn't just make a gift, you went and got 5 other people to, 7 other people to, you reached out to your community. Because if that many people came through, that means you made more asks than came through, right? So if I see that, I'm like, there's your next team. This is the identification of leadership. You're an organizer, you identify and develop leadership. So you spot the people who have been really just kind of showing up. And you're like, what can I do to support your leadership? Would make a direct ask. Are you willing to form your own fundraising team with your own goal of $10,000, and I'll support you? I want to go back a little bit though, just backtrack a little bit, which is that the first like 24 to 48 hours of the campaign are super crucial. It's when all the momentum starts, but you get all this information about how good is your ask? How much power do you have? How far is this going to go? You'll know within 36 hours, is this going to work, right? And if you are not seeing that momentum, if you haven't hit at least 10% of your goal minimum in the first 24 hours, you need to expand your team. It's not going to work. You're not going to hit your goal, I would guess. I would say there's nothing hard and fast, but probably you're going to have to expand your team. Okay. And if you have met your goal early, double it. If you hit it really fast, turn around, double it. People want to support that. That actually creates more momentum for your campaign. Let's see. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about that. We can go to the next slide. Oh, but I'm just going to also, before we keep going, everyone can see the tracking sheet. Yes, it sounds like. And also, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, because we just can't go back up through the chat and find them. And it's much easier for us to track them, but if you stick them in the Q&A, would super appreciate that. Okay, passing it back to you, Jules.
Great. Okay, so the last couple here, close. We hit our goal, but Ahmed is still fundraising. Like I mentioned, survival fees are ongoing, endless. So not only was he raising fees to evacuate his family, secure funds for transportation, for food, for rent, for the next 5 months, but ultimately his family needs money to return and to rebuild and for 1 million other things. So our campaign closed, but it continues on for his family. The next step is thank you, gratitude, thank your donors. If I reached out on the phone to them, I thanked them on the phone. We also posted some thank you social media posts, which were great. If I had a voice memo relationship with them, I also sent voice memos saying thank you as much as possible. Evaluate. Yeah, think about what worked, what you'd do differently. Yeah, a friend of mine was, like I mentioned, just like a phenomenal fundraiser, and we scooped them in as like an ad hoc team member. And I really think that like in the future, if you identify that with somebody, like bring them on very thoughtfully, and like I could have shared the tracking doc with them. So identifying donors would be even more streamlined. It's like something I would do differently next time. I think another thing Chanelle invited me to do was to ask people to stretch. Like if they offered a particular amount, if I would consider going back to them and asking if they could stretch. And I did not do that, but I think it's something to consider if it's feasible and realistic. And then the last piece here, develop new teams. Yeah, build a new team. Oh, Chanelle, this is you. Go ahead.
I think kind of covered it. Basically, this model expands, like I said at the top, your networks, your energy, your labor power, and your money by identifying that leadership, bringing them into a fundraising role, and then supporting them to run their own campaign. So that instead of you tapping your own networks over and over again, like I have some people, I've got one person who I know that I can ask for a more significant gift once a year. I consider that contact tapped after I ask once a year. So I need to move on from there, right? And the way to do that for those of you who feel is to like go to the people who you have already found are really showing up and become organize them into their own campaign. I'd love to know what people are thinking. That we're going to go into now. What are the components of an ask, and what are all the challenges of asking? So, like, how much should you ask for? Who should you ask? Like asking in different contexts. There's a lot of complex issues now around making a direct ask. But now that you've seen the framework, I'd love to hear in the chat from folks. What are you thinking? How does it sound? What is new or surprising to you about the model that we're discussing here? And I've got some more questions in the Q&A, which is great. We will get to those. But I want to first just get some feedback on what we have just shared. Good questions, great questions in the Q&A. Really? No one. There we go. I'm hanging on till I get some feedback, folks. Okay, great. So some folks are like, all right, I'm gonna build a team. Okay. All right. So this is one of the things I saw in the chat, something that we're definitely going to address. Well, what do I do? My network feels small. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Someone in the chat being like, oh, I know exactly who to ask. This is going to save me a lot of burnout. That's exactly the idea. See, we're burning out because we're not organizing. I'm not saying organizing is easy. It's not. But it's a hell of a lot easier than feeling like the energy and momentum you get from bringing other people in is incomparable. Okay, all of a sudden now it's like it's an avalanche of feedback. Thank you so much. I appreciate you responding to the prompt. Yes, it's so helpful to feel that our existing organizer skills apply here. Let me just respond to that for a second. It's not that it's organizing skills, it's that you're just organizing. A fundraising ask is an organizing ask. That's all it is. Instead of saying, will you come to the rally? You say, will you give $50? It's the same thing, guys. You're doing the exact same thing. And if you're organizing in everyone's been in an organization where you're like, we're just not growing, right? We've got like the same 12 people coming to every meeting because because you need to expand beyond your networks. It's the same thing. All you do is swap out where you would ask someone to contact their representative, to come to a protest. And instead you ask them to make a gift, and then you organize them in to their own organizing. Okay, this is now more than I can kind of even, I'm gonna slowly go over this, but I'm loving this. Thank you guys so much. Okay, there are some questions that I hope you can put into the Q&A so it'll be easier for us to deal with. Okay, great. Some people are like, can't do in person. That's fine. Phone is great. This I actually say is like your strongest fundraising tool. Phone calls. Face-to-face is great, but it's also, sometimes it can really take you a lot of time and a lot of distance to organize a face-to-face meeting. And I really recommend just getting on the phone. You could get off this call tonight and literally start calling people and say, I have just learned something really exciting I want to share with you. Will you join my team? I want to be on a fundraising team with you. This is why I want to work with you, and this is what I want us to do together. Okay. We'll get to the like people around me are poor. We're going to get to that. Okay, great. Okay, hold on. Yes, hadn't thought of leadership development. All organizing is leadership development. Organizers develop other people. That's the job, right? And so all I'm telling you, this is an organizing 101 training. It's no different. The power building model, it's just movement building. I'm just swapping out what we do as organizers for putting money into the equation. But there's this weird like division created between fundraising and organizer. Okay, we're going to get to the question. Do you ask a specific amount? All that stuff. Okay, we'll get to it. Let me see where we're at now. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I did that. Make it. Okay, I think now we're going to the next slide, which is make an organizing ask. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to say a little bit about what goes into an ask. First of all, I wouldn't overthink it. Don't make it too complicated. You should sound like a normal human as an organizer, asking someone to come to a rally. Remember, it's the same thing. Okay. Oh, definitely do not use words like racial capitalism and an ask your family. That is fine. You want to use, here's the 5 things that go to an ask. Why this? Why does this matter? Why now? This one is extremely important. It might be one of the most important parts of it. Okay. 3, why you? Why do you think your person who you're making the ask of should be a part of this? And then the last 2 parts are just so you're being more precise. How much do you need by when? Otherwise, it's like telling people you want to go to the rally, but not telling them when it is. That doesn't make any sense, right? So tell them when the rally is, tell them how much you're raising and when you need it by. So why does this matter? Why this? Why now? Why you? How much? By when? And you should be able to say that in 2 sentences. Now, you'll see in one of those, it says, why should you be part of it? Based on their values. Use their language, right? So, as a racial justice organizer, I use language with people all the time that I might not use in movement spaces. I'll use language like fairness. Things are just not fair, are they? I know you care about that. You've seen what's going on in Gaza. You know it's really not fair what's happening. Well, I'm supporting a friend of mine, their former student is trying to get their family out. They're trying to evacuate to Egypt, and we're trying to help them. Can you help me to raise the final $10,000 that they need to get onto the evacuation rolls. Very plain language, right? And yes, someone put tailor it to your target audience. The same as any kind of organizing ask. If you want someone to come to a rally, you're probably not going to use theory in the conversation, right? Okay, where are we at? Let me just look at where we're at. Okay, the other thing, just like a little thing, really triple check that all your links are working. Triple check that there is a smooth pathway from the ask to the donation. The link works. It's not like if you're asking people who don't live in the US, you've given them a way to ask that people outside of the United States can use. People outside of the United States cannot use Venmo. They do not use Zelle. Okay. Think about those logistics. Do some logistical due diligence before you launch it out into the world and find out you've just sent everyone the wrong information. And even organizations do this, by the way. No, don't feel bad if you've done this. I've worked with organizations that have the wrong or broken links or no way to donate on their website. It's fine, it's normal. Just clean shit up before you start. Okay, we are gonna now go on to what are some of the challenges to asking? Okay, I don't wanna just give answers here. I wanna crowdsource some of these, okay? So let's start with what's I'm trying to decide which one. Okay, let's start with I don't know who to ask. Okay, so Turner is gonna put a link in the chat to a tool called a donor prospecting tool. And this will just help you start your thinking, because a lot of people are like, I don't have a very big network. First of all, it might be bigger than you think. Like, because it's going to include, it could include literally everyone you've ever known in your entire life. I've known people who went back, who were my age and went back and asked their high school teachers. I don't know how they had contacts for their high school teachers, but they did somehow, email. It includes, people you know from the dog park. It includes anyone who is in your kid's life. So that is one thing, but I want to crowdsource other ideas in the chat. Who should you ask if you are isolated for some reason, in a rural area, and don't know who you should start with? Will people put some suggestions in the chat? Nobody is. And then I'm going to wait a minute and then it's going to get flooded. I hope it does. Okay, there we go. Churches and church groups. Oh yeah, 100%. So there's this thing in fundraising, which is that churches are known to be the best fundraisers there are. And it's not just, and the reason for that is because they ask every week. People are always like, oh, I can't ask again. And I get that. There's people I'm not going to ask more than once. But it isn't necessarily accurate. Sometimes it's just our anxiety that tells us we can't go back, right? Okay, great. Yes, some people are like, my strongest community is online. 100%. People like community leaders. I wouldn't ask them to give. I'd ask them to make an ask of their community. If you have someone who has that kind of potential, you don't want one gift. You want the power they have to make 15 asks. Okay. All of your exes who like you are the ones who don't like you. Tinder, why not, guys? Unless it gets you banned. I wouldn't be surprised. This is the problem, right? This is part of the problem with social media and apps is the repression. Okay. Oh wow. Somebody put in the chat that their ex reached out to make amends and they got him to donate to a friend's mutual aid campaign. I'm for that. Tinder bans. Yeah, I know. See, this is why, guys. This is why I'm like, your phone. Make a phone call. Okay. Now there's workshopping in the chat about which dating apps are best to fundraise through. But I will go back to recommending the phone. Okay, I'm anxious to make an ask. Here's the thing I recommend. You're now going to have a team. You're on a team. You and your team are going to lean on each other. You're going to practice your ask, and you're going to write asks for different contexts and different people. You're going to write an ask for a family member that might be quite different than for a colleague. And you're going to role play them with each other and give each other feedback. And so it won't be the first time you're doing it when you make the ask. Nobody answers their phone anymore. Yeah, leave a voice memo and ask them to call you back. Tell them you'd like to talk to them. Okay, what are we going to do next? Hold on, let me look at. Okay, no one I know has any money. Let's address that one. Okay. Super important principle to me. The first time I ever saw a public fundraising pitch being made, I told the person doing it, I don't think we should ask for more than $5. And I still hear that today. People being like, shouldn't ask for more than $5. And we shouldn't ask people who we know are broke. Absolutely not. This is an organizing ask. And it is our responsibility to invite poor and working class people into movement. Do not exclude poor and working class people from your asks, because you're making a decision for them about what they want to do with their money. Let people decide what they are going to do with their money, because poor and working class people want to be part of movements. It is not okay to decide for other people that they can't. They get to decide. They get to say no. I'm a believer in consent around fundraising. If someone says no to me, cool, no problem. You know, like with, if you get someone that's like, I just can't right now, no problem, thank you, friend. Do you have 3 people you could ask? Not, will you share my fundraiser on your social media? Do you have 3 people in your life who you could make an ask to, right? More explicit. Jules, do you want to share a little bit about our experience with the kind of, your experience making asks of working class people during our campaign?
Yeah, I just think people who I anticipated to have less access to resources were some of the most generous givers. A friend of mine who probably pieces together a handful of jobs, is also a student, donated $1,000. Like, I am assuming that is a significant portion of their monthly income. Yeah, I was like really blown away by like understanding people were really like wanting to be able to give in a meaningful way to them, and participate in this campaign.
Yeah. And someone's putting in the chat that we have the research on this, that that lower income people are more generous, which there's just tons of research on that. And we won't go into the reasons for that, why that is here, but that is the case. And you'll find that when you ask. The last one I want to just address, and we've got like 10 questions that we're going to address in the Q&A now, which is great. The last question I want to, that's up here is I don't know how to stand out. What am I going to do about that, right? How am I going to stand out? The thing I want to say is that this is a very personal approach. You are what stands out. You're making an ask that's based on your stake, your investment, and your relationship to the person you're asking. So that's what stands out. It's not just a social media post. It's a like, hey, person who I care about, this is a thing I really care about, and I think you do too. Will you be a part of it with me? And that's actually what makes it so unique, is that it is about your relationship to the fundraiser and your relationship to the person you're asking, and that is completely distinct. It's incomparable to any other fundraiser. here's another little fundraising fact. The number one reason people give is not because they believe in the cause. It's because they were asked. That's the number one reason. Somebody asked them. Mostly people want to say yes, right? So we rely on that, and that's what's going to make it stand out. Okay, how are we doing for time? Got the donor prospecting tool. Okay, I think we are going, right, how to choose campaigns. I wonder, I'm kind of just wondering, Jules, if we should just having a little transparent facilitation moment. Should we stick with this and do the how to choose campaigns and then go to the Q&As, like as planned?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to stick with the plan and talk next about how to choose fundraisers if you don't already have an existing relationship to one. Can you go up one, back one, I mean? Okay, great. Congratulations, you are an organizer. You are in the space because you are an organizer. And what I want to hear from folks before we go on to the next section is just, I want a little bit of a temperature read. How are folks feeling? How is this landing? I love that we're up to 13 questions in the Q&A. Great. You know, because we're not in a room and I can't see anyone's face and I can't see the like, what, you know. So I'd love to get a bit of a temperature read. Okay, great.
More confident and less overwhelmed is excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still less overwhelmed, still somewhat overwhelmed. I get that. That makes sense. And hopefully it will also help that everyone is going to have a copy of this recording too, so you can kind of go through it more slowly. Like I said, I am offering drop-in office hours 2 weeks from today at 5 p.m. Pacific so that people can come to me. I would really love to hear how things go. Okay, great. Feeling like they have actionable items. Okay, great. Okay. Yes, totally. It's like when you ask people to come to rallies, it's the same thing because it's an organizing ask. Okay. Okay. All right. Shall we do a little bit of the next one on how to make decisions around choosing a fundraiser and around courage and risk? Okay, let's do the next slide, please. Okay. All right, so one of the questions we get is, how do I decide what campaign to support and how to prioritize? So we wanted to just take a moment on this and talk about the fact that there is no just way to do this because this is an unconscionable situation. This is deeply unjust that people are forced to raise funds in order to evacuate, i.e. because they're being displaced. And so it's not like there is a easy one size fits all answer to this. But what I'm going to do is suggest we go back to our organizing principles. We lean on our organizing principles again, which is to move relationally. So to seek to support through connections that you have with Palestinian folks in your community. And if you don't, to reach out to Palestinian organizations to see if you can find a way to support them. And if there are none in your area, there are national Palestinian organizations, right? And this is to encourage people to connect with Palestinian community in the diaspora in their own community. And of course, for sure, we're going to share a fundraiser here that is, there's also organization called intermediaries. People play a role where they connect donors and the directly impacted community. And it's really great to figure out what those organizations are so that you're not trying to make that decision. Somebody else with close accountable relationships to the directly impacted community is making those distribution decisions. So we don't have to, because we couldn't make them accountably, you know? And people are welcome to share their fundraisers in the chat as well. We're going to share a link to a fundraiser that is active and urgently seeking funds. We are not recommending here that people start their own GoFundMe. It's super complex. There are incredible barriers, surveillance, all kinds of issues. However, if you do, an organization called Watermelon Project has released some resources on how you can do this accountably and effectively. And we're going to share this in the chat as well. Okay, I think you should take it from here for this next section, Len. Okay. After the link goes in the chat, and then Jules, I want to pass it to you.
Sure. All right. This asks us to right size our asks. Fundraising is organizing, which we'll keep repeating, and it means that it carries risks, especially if it really poses some kind of threat. And this is an invitation to assess your risks. Is it threats to livelihood or risks, personal conflict, state violence? And this is, be courageous. It's an invitation to be courageous. And at the same time, practice security culture. Super important. There will be, there already is, thanks Turner, a link in the chat for your reference around security culture. This is a helpful guide to show up in movement spaces to protect yourself, to protect your comrades from state repression as a security culture tool. And I think that the name of this is A Troublemaker's Guide, Principles for Racial Justice Activists in the Face of State Repression, developed by the Catalyst Project. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go into this next piece. Models of courage. Just thinking about risk. Yeah, making this ask is relative when thinking about actual risk and safety. Give yourself support and compassion and be realistic about the risk that you're taking. What is the real danger? Something feeling scary and actually being dangerous are two very different things. Everybody in Palestine resisting Israeli and Zionist violence are experiencing real and horrifying danger. So when I'm thinking about a model of courage, I'm thinking about everybody in Gaza. I'm particularly thinking about young people in Gaza who are directly resisting Zionist aggression. This is a photo of Ahad Tamimi, a Palestinian, challenging Israeli soldiers during a protest in the West Bank, and this is from years ago. They are now in their 20s. People all over Palestine have been challenging Israeli occupation for a very, very, very long time, and have been doing so from before this photo, from after this photo, and continue and continue and continue. So I wanted to share this image as we think about what does it mean to take this risk to ask for money compared to risks and what it actually means to have like safety and what danger actually looks like. So I want to maybe pause for a minute and invite folks to put in the chat if there's any, a model of courage for you. Yeah, who is your model of courage?
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice seeing some folks.
Stormy Daniels.
Models of courage. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. Mm-hmm. It's nice to see. So people are being moved by right now.
Yeah, I'm going to read some aloud just for the recording. Folks are putting family members, Motaz, Bobby Sands, a Northern Irish political prisoner under Thatcher, Jacinta from Australia, their dad, fundraising campaign organizers, Rasha's daughter, who is going to TikTok to share experience from Gaza, Layla Khaled. Yeah, more friends. Yeah, thanks for putting this in here. Student activists.
Student activists. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What we want to do with our bit of remaining time is answer some of the questions that have come up. And we want to pause right now and give you a moment to write down 3 to 6 people who you are going to ask either to be on a team with you or who you're going to ask if they will form their own fundraising team, and can you support them to do that? And we're just going to take a moment. I'm going to ask you to do it. See our little visual of the terrifying telephone. And then we're going to do some Q&A. Because we're not in a room, I can't see. Are you writing things down? If I was looking at you in a room, I would see if your pens were out and you were writing down some names. Okay, great. Someone's got 4 names. Great. Off to a strong start. Great. People are putting the names they're going to ask in the chat. All right. Awesome. We raised our 10K with 3 people. That's exceptional. And part of that, like I said, was the urgency. Actually, something I want to underline, you will not get people to give money unless you really strongly answer the question, why now? Why should they do it right now? And in this case, there's a very clear answer to that. But I've worked with people who are trying to fundraise for an organization, and they're like, well, we think it's urgent because your rights are being eroded. Our rights are being eroded every day, constantly. That is not enough of a sense of why I need to give today. That's the question you need to answer. Why right now? Anyways, I forgot to mention that earlier. Other folks, have you got your lists before we get into some Q&A? So people are like, I don't know, I can't remember. I fully feel you. No, do go look at your social media list. I also recommend you look at who you're texting and your call log. Okay, great. We've got some folks who are putting some names down. Me too. Sometimes I've been like, wait, who are my friends again? And then I have to go look at my phone to remind me, who am I in touch with? And these people can be anywhere too. That's another really cool thing about the accessibility of this. They can be anywhere in the world. Okay, great. People have some lists. Okay. Let me just look at some of the, should we do some Q&A, Jules?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First of all, you guys are fucking amazing. Congratulations. You made it through a fundraising training. Very few people want to do a fundraising training. It will empower you with the skills to supercharge organizers in a way that few other things can do as quickly. So I am so proud of everyone here. I think you're amazing. I literally want to do everything I can to support you in your work. And then we're gonna like just look at some questions. Anything you want to say, Jules?
No, this was great. Yeah, grateful for everybody who showed up. We really didn't expect many people, and this is phenomenal, and just, yeah, a lot of power here to like grow the reach and move a lot of money.
Okay, I want to just go into the Q&A, and I want to like crowdsource a little bit of it too. How many people are here? It started out in the 60s, now it's 55. Okay, great. Okay, let's do a little bit of questions. Let's see. Okay, I want to sort of see, like, kind of knock off some ones that might, be quicker. Okay. Oh boy. Like someone's like, okay, I feel like I'm gonna, essentially the question is like, am I gonna alienate the mutual aid anarchists who don't like the language of like teams and leadership building? Yeah, that's fine. You can use different language. I get that. You can use whatever language is appropriate to, maybe it's a crew. I don't know. But, and I get that people really don't like the language of leadership development. It's fine to use something else that you think will be more, it's like it's an organizing ask, right? So with any organizing ask, you're going to try to find language that works for your people. Right. Let's see. What would you say, Jules? What are some examples of how to identify the leaders who should be recruited to your team?
I mean, I think the example that I had given earlier, the time that folks are putting in, if you've already started your campaign and you're identifying folks to grow your team, yeah, folks are like pouring in time, attention, accountability, follow through, passion. I had a friend who was just like reaching and reaching and reaching all over the place. And it was just exciting to see. So that's who I would bring on. But I think if I were to start like building a new team now, it would be that person immediately. And it would be the friends who like, I think hit all those marks too. Who's interested, who's on board, who has capacity. Yeah, who can sort of move this forward swiftly. When Chanelle asked me, it was like at a moment where I had an unexpected amount of capacity. So the stars aligned in that way.
Yeah, which like sometimes again, people are like, I'm worried about making an ask because it will overwhelm people. Jules had been in a car accident, but that actually meant that you had certain amount of time and certain kind of capacity. So again, I really discourage you from making decisions for people. Right? Because a lot of the things we've got some questions in here too about like overwhelmed, about the amount of time, the amount of energy. You need more of a team. You need more support. The answer is always more support. Expand your team so it's not on you. Organizers do not do everything themselves. They recruit and recruit and recruit so that it's other people taking on more and more every responsibility you could think of. Think, could someone else be stepping into this? Who would this be a good stretch for? Who in my life would this be a good leadership stretch for? Recruit so that it's not on you. I mean, I have had to train myself to think this way. Like, oh my God, how am I going to also do that? No, stop. Who else? would this be a great organizing opportunity for? Recruit. Somebody also asked about whether, if you've got like a stalled fundraiser, is it worth trying to revive it or just starting new? You can revive it. That's what we did. Ours had been going, the fundraiser that we helped to close out had been going for like 5 months. It's completely fine to be like, we're starting our campaign to raise $5,000 or whatever, because your campaign is the new part, right? Okay, Jules, anything you want to take on? Oh, further thoughts on asking people to stretch and or increasing their donation size. You can. Also, most of the reason people don't do that is anxiety, not because it's actually a problem to do it. I've seen people say, are you willing to add another 0 to that ask? That means they're asking for a 10 times increase in what that person has offered. You can do that. You can say, what would be a stretch gift for you? Right? And in terms of like, okay, I'll just stop there. Jules, anything else you want to jump in on before we close?
Looking through these options.
The politics and communication issues with the person who spearheaded the campaign. I don't know if that question was about us or about Ahmed, who we were fundraising for. We had a direct line to Ahmed through our friend MJ. So we were in communication, you know, making sure, for example, we confirmed the Zelle is going through, right? Everything's working okay on that front, right? Around banking before we launched it. Do you recommend asking for a specific amount? Usually, yes. Sometimes I'll give a range. What did you do, Jules?
I did not ask for an amount. Hold on, let me think. I think I had a slightly different approach to different people. Some people I asked, can they give? Some people I did ask for a specific amount. And for some people I shared what I gave, to identify like, this is what I've poured in. I really stretched. This is like so important and meaningful to me. And this is something I want to like really like support. And so for some people I did share like, this is what I put in. Can you similarly like explore digging deep?
Yeah, there's also a question like, how do I know when to stop? I mean, people will need money indefinitely. Again, I'm going to suggest you lean on organizing. Like, can the campaign be passed on to someone again, whose leadership you're developing? That's your job. Your job is to build somebody else to replace yourself. And that deals with the overwhelm and also deals with being able to close out a campaign. In terms of team management, best practices around communication and infighting. I mean, this is kind of why, you know, what I'm proposing here is like this small model of 3 to 6 people who are already in your life. You're recruiting your friends who are then recruiting their friends or family members. It does reduce, it does kind of speed up and improve the quality of trust in the communication. Oh my.
And this one. Oh, go ahead, Chanelle.
Go ahead, please.
This question says, feeling overwhelmed with the amount of social energy required in organizing, can you give recommendations for how to maintain my own energy for the long haul? Big fundraising goal. This really resonates with me. And I think distributing like the energy across a team is really helpful. So inviting people into that team and sharing the lift and sharing the asks. And I know that like a phone call or an in-person meet requires much more energy for me than leaving a voice memo, for example. So I'm just like trying to identify what I have access to and how I could get support with like what is a pretty big thing. And I feel like the 6 days that we were like the 4 days that we were running this thing, it was a lot of energy, and it was like such a gift to share that with Chanelle and Sunny, and all the people around us. And it was like, yeah, like just to distribute that was really helpful.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer 2 more questions and then we're going to close. How's that sound? Sound good? Okay. Somebody asked anonymously, of course, what if the person who originally started the campaign is hard to work with? You got 10 days. This is a 2-week long process. And then you move on, start your own team with people who you enjoy working with. That's my take. This is part of the joy of a fundraising campaign, is that it's finite. There's also some questions basically about like accountability is how I would phrase it, like white saviorism. How do you, make sure you're not centering your story? I mean, I think that's a bigger question that I can answer in one go here, but that is partly why I, for example, asked Jules to write and ask rather than give them one, which is like, what's your stake? This isn't about you saving someone. Why are you doing this? What is the common ground you have here that inspires you to want to do this work? Without it making it about you, it does matter that you see yourself in solidarity and in comradeship. What do you want to say about that, Jules?
No, nothing else to add.
Okay. I'm just looking at the chat. Okay. I think we're going to close. I think that's everything. I want to really thank JVP-LA. I want to thank Lex and Turner. And I want to thank Jules for being such an incredible partner in non-crime, in doing this wonderful campaign together. And thank all of you who showed up. And we will send every link we have shared in the follow-up email.
And thank you to Chanelle. Thank you for just sharing so much like strategic, thoughtful, like offerings to all of us.
Thank you all. It's so nice to see the love coming in on the chat as well.